Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and I'm sorry for being a little bit late. Well, we're here. Can we? So I'm going to talk about two things. First, what happened in the Senate, and then what's happening in the House and here in Washington. But the two are related. There's a common theme to the events on both sides of the Capitol, and that is dealing with an overreaching executive. Now, here in the Senate, we just sent a strong message to President Trump that under our Constitution, the executive branch and the legislative branch are co-equal. After President Trump decided to divert $3.6 billion from our military, military families, to a wall that he promised again and again and again would be paid for by Mexico, Congress stood up today and said in a bipartisan voice that the president was just simply wrong. It's our job in Congress to limit executive overreach, to defend our core powers, to prevent a president, any president, from ignoring the will of Congress every time it fails to align with the will of the president. That's what the separation of powers means. That's what checks and balances are for. And that's what today's vote reflected. All too often in the past 2 years, Republican senators, in blind obeisance to this president, have indulged his worst impulses. But those Republican senators who voted to buck the president and voted against his wall, to them I say thank you. To Senators Wicker and Toomey, Romney, Collins, thank you for standing up for the Constitution. Thank you for showing some sense and some courage. These Republican senators said, plain and simple, that President Trump was wrong, and they voted against funding his wall by taking money from the military. The senators that did not vote with us should be ashamed. Ashamed that they just gave cover to this president to trample our Constitution and steal from the military. But can we get some quiet down there, please? Thank you. But the bipartisan vote today suggests that perhaps my Republican colleagues are beginning to rise to the occasion. Now, on the transcript and the ensuing events. Earlier this morning, President Trump released a quote-unquote document of his call with President Zelensky. Considering this document was something the White House chose to release, it was far more damaging to the president's case than any of us anticipated. In this telephone conversation, the President of the United States made an extraordinary request to the President of Ukraine to investigate Trump's political opponent and aid President Trump's re-election campaign. Does anyone think this conversation was in the national interest, or was it in the President's personal political interest? Let me repeat. Do any of my Republican colleagues think this phone call reflects a president pursuing the national interest, or was he pursuing his own political ambitions? Every Republican, every one of them, needs to answer this question. The document also raises a host of new questions that I expect the House impeachment inquiry will seek to answer. Here are some of them. Do my colleagues believe it's appropriate, after the Ukrainian president brings up a request for military aid, for the president to say, "I would like you to do us a favor, though," before asking him to investigate a right-wing conspiracy theory? President Trump mentioned multiple times during the call he wanted President Zelensky to speak with Attorney General Barr and Rudy Giuliani? What conversations between Barr, Giuliani, and President Zelensky and other Ukrainian officials occurred Did they actually speak to one another? What did they say? And what promises or requests were made by Attorney General Barr and Mr. Giuliani? Why would the president involve his personal lawyer, Mr. Giuliani, in what President Trump claims was official government business? There are many, and was that done to get around some official channels in the State Department and elsewhere? There are many more questions, and those are just the ones that come from the document we were given. This White House has a history of doctoring public disclosures to save the president from embarrassment. If they do it for small things, like when they changed the transcript of the White House communications director saying the president, quote, sinks 3-foot putts into saying he sinks 30-foot putts, then there's no telling what they do in a document as consequential as this one. Even with the possibility that the administration doctored or left out major sections, though, this document demonstrates that President Trump made it abundantly and redundantly clear to the president of the Ukraine that he wanted him to investigate his political opponent, and further, that he wanted him to work with Attorney General Barr to make it happen. Let me say that again. This document absolutely validates the wisdom of Speaker Pelosi's decision to open up a formal impeachment inquiry. President Trump and his allies, like Leader McConnell, like Leader McCarthy, will say this is about politics. And of course, they'll do what they usually do, accuse Democrats of trying to relitigate 2016. There is no credible or straight-faced reason to believe that. This is about our national security, the integrity of our foreign policy, and democratic elections. This is about abuse of power by an overreaching executive, something the Founding Fathers feared. And what they feared at the top of the list was that that overreaching executive would be involved with foreign powers to jaundice what happens here in America. There should be a bipartisan concern about these issues. It shouldn't be Democrats or Republicans. It should be congressmen, senators of either party who are saying we need to look into this. Indeed, just yesterday, every single Republican senator said that the administration's decision to withhold the whistleblower complaint from Congress was wrong. We just had a vote where a number of my Republican colleagues said the administration was wrong to divert funds from the military to build the wall. So, it's beginning to seem, with the crescendo of events, that Republicans are beginning to stand up to the president when he's wrong. That hasn't happened much in the past. But I hope that my Republican colleagues will see that Leader McConnell's strategy of defending the president at all costs is a losing one, and stand up for the rule of law and our democracy. Questions? Just on this subject. Well, no, you, not you.
Senator Schumer, what do you think the Senate needs to do at this point? Do you just have to wait for the House to do its work on this impeachment question? How will you respond?
Well, again, there is the Senate Intelligence Committee. Senators Burr and Warner have had a good relationship, and they should pursue looking into these facts as well.
Senator, we didn't really discuss the possibility of an impeachment inquiry during the Russia investigation, but now you are on these Ukraine allegations. What's categorically different, and why did you not?
The president is directly involved here. It's pretty clear what has happened, and I think this, as bad as the other stuff was, this is even worse.
Senator Schumer, there are a number of bills that you are trying to work across the aisle with Republicans and the White House on right now, including gun control, USMCA. Do you fear that an impeachment inquiry is going to extinguish any hope of working across the aisle with the White House or with Republican colleagues?
Okay. Well, it's certainly not on our behalf. We're going to try to work on issues with our Republican colleagues, even with the president when we can. We believe we need to do something about guns. We believe we need to reduce the cost of prescription drugs. The $64,000 question is, will the president want to work with us, given what happened? We shall see. Taylor?
Have you had any private conversations with Republicans that lead you to believe that there's sort of reflexive support of Trump may be in question on this latest?
I think the cascade of issues and facts that are coming forward is enormous. And I do think all along, many of our Republican colleagues have expressed personal doubts to us privately. But I think more and more are now going to begin to have to say something publicly. This is just too much.
Schumer,
Last question.
If articles of impeachment are passed by the House, are you certain there would be a trial here in the Senate?
Well, look, we're not up to that yet. Let the House do a thorough investigation. Let them do it in a bipartisan way, and we'll see what happens. Thank you, everybody.